The spiral, the fall, and the rise, a story of attention, fear, and turning points. Let me share something with you today, something personal, something real. It's not just a story about money or failure or success. It's a story about the patterns we all live through at some point in our lives. Maybe not with finances. Maybe with love. Maybe with health. Maybe with our sense of purpose. But the story underneath? It's universal. It all started with a conversation I had years ago with a friend of mine. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel was one of those quiet observers of life. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it came from a place of deep thought. One evening, as we sat watching the sun disappear behind the hills, he opened up. He said, "You know, there's this thing I've noticed over the years, and I still can't fully make sense of it. I've watched people I know well, go through what looked like financial disasters. Like clockwork. I'd see them start to struggle. Maybe business slows down, then the bills pile up, the house goes up for sale, the relationships strain. And it just keeps going. Like they're on a runaway train headed downhill and there's no brakes. One thing after another until they crash, usually in bankruptcy or total collapse." He looked down, took a deep breath, and added something I'll never forget. "But then, months later, sometimes a year, I'd see them again. New car. A bigger house. Vacation photos all over social media. Like nothing ever happened. Sometimes, they even seem happier. And I just kept wondering, how? Why does it have to go all the way down before they bounce back up? Why couldn't they stop the fall halfway through? Why couldn't they reverse the spiral before it got that bad?" It was such an honest question. And I think it's one we all ask in some way when we see someone, or ourselves, going through that free fall. And sitting with us that day was someone I deeply respect, a woman named Maya. Maya doesn't speak often, but when she does, her words carry the weight of lived wisdom. She smiled gently and said, "The reason for the downward spiral is actually quite simple, but most people don't see it until they're already at the bottom. It's all about where their attention is. The moment you start focusing on what you're losing, what's missing, what's going wrong, your energy shifts. And energy is everything. It shapes what you attract, how you behave, and how you perceive the world." She continued, "Fear of loss is a powerful force. It narrows your vision. You stop seeing opportunities. You start reacting instead of responding. You hold tighter and tighter to your money, your image, your expectations. And in that tension, in that desperation, you block the very flow that could have saved you." That hit me hard. Because I'd been there. Not financially, but emotionally. I'd experienced that same spiral. When something felt like it was slipping away, and my mind became consumed with the worst case scenario. And just like Maya said, in that mindset, all you see is more loss. She went on, "The thing is, as long as your dominant emotion is fear, your dominant signal to life is lack. It's like you're tuning your inner radio to the frequency of not enough. And so, even if life is trying to send you relief, abundance, opportunities, you're not tuned in. You literally can't receive it. It's sitting right outside your door, but your door is locked by fear, blame, and doubt." And then she said something I'll never forget. But here's the irony. When people finally hit rock bottom, something shifts. Because in that moment, when there's nothing left to protect or lose, the fear quiets down. The resistance softens. They stop grasping. And in that strange silence, their focus starts to lift. They stop thinking about what they've lost, and they begin, quietly at first, to imagine what might still be possible. I sat there stunned. Because it was true. I'd seen it, and lived it. Maya smiled and said, "You see, what looks like a breakdown is often a breakthrough. Not because hitting bottom is necessary, but because, for many people, it's the only place quiet enough for them to finally listen differently, to shift their story. And then she said the most important part: it's never really about the money, or the house, or the status. It's always been about the story you're telling yourself. When you tell a story of fear and scarcity, life mirrors it. But the moment you start telling a story of possibility, even if your outer world hasn't changed yet, the inner world shifts. And when that changes, everything begins to follow. That evening changed the way I understood so many things. Because I realized, we're all telling stories, every single day. About who we are. About what we deserve. About what's possible for us. And often, the spiral we're stuck in is just the echo of an old story that we've been too afraid to stop telling. So if you ever find yourself in a spiral, emotional, financial, relational, I invite you to pause. Ask yourself, where's my attention right now? What story am I telling? Am I looking at what's missing? Or what's still possible? Because the truth is, you don't have to wait until you hit bottom to start telling a new story. You can shift in the middle of the fall. You can catch yourself. You can look up before it all collapses. You can reverse the spiral with something as subtle as a different thought. It begins with something small, a breath, a moment of gratitude, a better question. And in that shift, you start to rise again. Not because life has suddenly changed, but because you have. And maybe, just maybe, that's where real wealth begins, not with what you own, but with the story you're willing to rewrite.